Yes, we are painting another squig. Not the entire thing, because that's not the point of this video. I already did 2 videos on painting squigs, and I think that's more than enough. Instead, I thought we can use our little boss squig here as a little test piece to practice some speckled or spotted skin techniques. To begin with, we are starting off with some pink fleshy colors, going over the whole body of the squig, even though this color is only going to remain on underbelly, the bottom of the feet, and around the face a little bit. The reason why I'm doing it over the entire figure at this point is, one, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to leave it at the beginning of this project, and 2, because red is such a transparent color and we're going to be putting that over this, we want everything to be the same color underneath, so the red doesn't look differently when it's going over the white primer as opposed to the pink color. While we started off with the pink base coat over the entire model, once I started figuring out exactly where I wanted to leave it, those were the only areas that needed highlighting. So you can see now we're concentrating more just on the underbelly, the feet, and the face area. Now we can slowly start working in our red, and I'm going for a very soft transition between the pink and the red. So we're starting off very subtly, and also since this is a leader figure for the Squig army, we got our paint very thin here. I'm taking my time. More transparent layers means smoother transition between your colors. And before you ask, yes, we could have done the red first and then done the pink parts. I didn't do that because, again, I didn't know how much pink I was going to leave, and also just applying it, I find it a lot easier to leave basically the underbelly color, the color underneath the red, doing that first. It's kind of like doing it in order for me, but you can do the reverse, it's up to you. After the Vermillion, we switched to a flat red, which is actually a darker red color, because we're not highlighting here, we're transitioning between colors. So we start off with the lighter, pinker reds towards the pink color, the skin tone color on the figure, and then we start transitioning into the darker flat red. So finally we get to the spotting portion, and for that I'm using a new tool. This is a clay sculptor or a dotting tool. They also sell it as for doing fingernails, for doing dots on fingernails, I guess. But basically it's a metal stick with a metal ball at the end, and they come in different sizes for doing different sizes of dots. Right now our dots are very prominent, which is not what I want. I want them subtle and more blended into the surface. So after that layer dries, I give it a couple very thin glazes with flat red and a little bit of violet red, so we can start adding some color into our red. And just put on, I don't know how many I did. It could have been 4, could have been 5, but to really smooth out those dots, to blend them into the surface so they look like they're part of the skin and not just on the skin. Then we repeat the process, this time using a darker color and also working it a little bit further up towards the back of the squig, so it gets darker as we move up. Now I'm using this little dotting tool, which I'll give my opinion on at the end of the video, but you can also use a toothpick. That's what I normally use. You can also use a brush, but you want to be cautious about using a brush because it's easy to damage the tip when you're stabbing it repeatedly onto a surface like a miniature. And then once again, just like before, we blend in those dots to make them a little bit softer. This time going, again, with a slightly darker color as we move up towards the back of the squig. And then we use Camo black-brown, yes, it had to come in somewhere, for the final layer of dots. And this one is just along the back, a little bit working down the sides, and this one is not gonna get glazed over because I wanted this one to be a little bit more prominent and showy because this is gonna be right underneath the rider, so I want this one to be seen a little bit more. As I just said, you can use a brush for doing dots, which I'm using to paint all the little pimples on this guy. Because we did a speckled surface, I have to use a very bright color on the pimples so they don't just blend in. Also, it's hard to notice, but you may spot it. All the dots that we did using our metal tool has left a little bit of texture on the miniature because the dotting tools apply so much paint. It actually started to build up a little bit, so that's kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing. If you want it nice and smooth, it's going to be a problem, but if you don't mind adding a little bit of extra texture to your miniature, it might be a benefit. And there is our finished speckled squig. We have a nice subtle pattern to him, which is what I wanted for this particular project. If you want a stronger, more prominent spotted or speckled skin, you can just omit the glazes or use far less of them. As for the dotting tool itself, well, I'm a bit torn. I'm old school and I prefer to make my own dotting tools out of toothpicks that I can cut to any size and shape that I want. The problem with the dotting tool is even the smallest size, because it's round and paint is very viscous, it picks up a lot of paint. So it's even the smallest size deposited quite a large amount of paint on a small miniature. With a toothpick, I could use the actual toothpick, or I could shave it down to make a finer point. It's not rounded, it comes to an actual tip, and of course they're very cheap and you just throw them away once it's dirty. You don't have to worry about cleaning it like you would the metal ball because you don't want the paint to build up on the surface and then warp any future dots you make. I do see the dotting tool as being a little bit easier to use because it's a non-distortable solid metal ball. It doesn't matter from what angle you use it from, it's a ball, it's the same shape, as opposed to a toothpick. If you use it straight down 90 degrees, or if you use it at a slight angle, you may get a different size dot, which is maybe a benefit, but if you want to do a whole bunch of dots that are the same size, well, then the dotting tool might be able to help you. But that's enough for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
There's a flaming moose blocking traffic on I-35W northbound.
Would somebody please put me out? I seem to be on fire.